if you put yourself through an honest, emotional assessment of your value at work, how would you honestly assess yourself and the value you hold in the eyes of the people that are in charge of leading you? Or, more simply put, do you believe that your boss values your contributions? Well, today, my friends, we're going to tackle and examine that very question. And I want to give you some statistical evidence which will fortify a major portion of today's conversation. According to my friends over at Robert Half, over 59% of today's American leaders admit facing decision dilemmas at least once a day, which minimizes the impact that leaders believe that they can have in positively impacting the people that they're in charge of leading. Meanwhile, a 2024 Harvard Business Review study revealed that over half of the American workforce today feels underappreciated at work. 46.4% of today's workforce only feels somewhat valued, and over 10% of the people who clock in every day believe that they hold no value at all in today's organizational or workplace culture. For my friend Kurt Busch, he has one question he wants to ask you. Are you tired of feeling invisible at work or stuck in a workplace situation and scenario that doesn't bring you joy? If so, this conversation is for you today. Because you see, Busch is a leadership coach that helps you to define and find leadership, clarity, and direction in your career. He's got over 10 years of experience leading high-performance and highly aligned teams. He's also a certified internal families systems practitioner, trauma-informed coach, and the co-founder of Brimstone Coaching Group. He's got a background in corporate leadership, pastoral ministry, and life coaching. He helps leaders to break free from self-doubt, enhance authenticity, and lead with confidence. He's overcome his own struggles with imposter syndrome, and now he's passionate about guiding others through transformational growth and authentic leadership. And he joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Kurt, if you're ready, I want to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to learn how you help organizational leaders really develop the clarity and confidence they need to lead with presence, my friend. It's great to see you, and happy Wednesday to you, my friend.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Kevin. Happy Wednesday to you too.
Absolutely. So, Kurt, I want to ask you to start our conversation by detailing for me how you would describe effective organizational leadership, which allows, the employees to also feel like they're rowing in the same boat, so to speak, and invested in the outcome of a strong organizational culture. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm probably only going to need about 10 hours to answer that.
I'll go pop some popcorn and come back. I
Yeah,
promise.
that's great.
Okay.
So Kevin, I think on a high level, how I always begin to answer a question like that is I have a lean towards a theory or philosophy that says people connect with people more than they connect with companies or even visions or mission statements. I think people connect with people first. So when I think about effective organizational leadership, when I think about getting employees and people in the organization rowing in the same direction. And I love how you put that. I love that imagery, by the way. I think about like how do we help create a culture that allows people to be fully who they are, most as most of the time as they can be. I think most people connect with things like empathy, honesty, authenticity far more than they connect with, a compelling vision or a compelling mission. So I think anything we can do to create a culture and an environment where the leaders can embody those things, empathy, authenticity, honesty, I think all of those things are going a long way to help people row in the same direction or like want to row, because I think that's what you asked, right? How do we get people to want to row in the same direction? I think those are the easiest. That's a complex thing, but that's the shortest answer I can give you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for yourself personally, you spent over a decade in the nonprofit and manufacturing space, and you have come to realize something simple but yet sobering. You say that most leaders and professionals aren't thriving and they're simply surviving, my friend. And I wonder why you hold that philosophy, my friend. And I wonder how much you want to share about that this morning.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I mean, I think first and foremost, I believe that today because I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand in the nonprofit world. I've seen it in the corporate world. I think what I would say about it is I think culturally speaking, we reward people who blast past their boundaries, who give more to their organizations than they want to. They stay late, they come early, they work on weekends, they do all these things. That's rewarded so heavily that I think it leads to things like burnout. I think we reward the sort of fake it till you make it culture. And we reward when people live into that. And I think when we reward that, then those are the results we just get and perpetuate and all that sort of thing. So I think surviving to me, what I see when people are surviving, that means that they're living and leading from a place that's misaligned with who and how they really want to be. Meaning there's a difference that people feel like I have to walk into my place of work or the place where I lead, and I have to flip a switch and be somebody different. And that, I think, leads to exhaustion and leads to this idea that we're just simply surviving.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kurt, I want to ask you about responsibility pressure as leaders and considering the societal culture that we're living in today. How do you sort of define effective responsibility pressure management for leaders? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I love that question, Kevin. That's a phenomenal question. Leadership comes with a lot of responsibility. Like I want to be really clear. I think any sort of leadership comes with a lot of responsibility. So I never want to say leadership should be easy or free from, the weight of leadership. But here's what I would say. I think most of us carry that heavy weight of leadership, but we also carry this other weight and this other responsibility that we feel like we have to fit in, or we feel like we have to guard ourselves so people don't see who we really are or see the places that we're maybe weaker than some other people around us, or some parts of our leadership that need to be developed. And we hide and we protect ourselves. And I think that weight actually makes the actual real weight of responsibility and leadership feels so much heavier. So I think an effective carrying of responsibility is one that can separate and parse out what is the real weight of responsibility and what is the weight of protection and hiding that I feel that makes that unsustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carter, if I put you in the room with 100 newly appointed CEOs, and I asked you to tell them about the importance of collaborative culture where everyone within the organization is given a hand in helping to make decisions. I want to know your message to those 100 newly minted CEOs because I truly believe if you develop a culture of collaboration, you get to progress a lot faster because people are invested in the organizational outcome to be positive. So tell me about your message when it comes to collaborative leadership, my friend.
Yeah, I love it, Kevin. I feel like maybe you're more equipped to talk to that room than I am. And if you have a room 100 CEOs, I'd love to talk to them. By the way, if that's real, let's set this up. Uh, yeah, collaboration. I mean, I like the way you said it, how it leads to real progress. I would say something to this effect. I would say that collaboration, true collaboration, when we allow ourselves to be fully, authentically who we are and who we want to be, that sort of true collaboration it actually does get results that our organizations need. I believe, like from a people side of things, Kevin, I think everybody in a room, no matter who they are, as part of an organization, the organization needs every one of those people, and not just like who they think they need to be. Our organizations need us as who we really are. I have a voice, you have a voice, and our organizations need our voices, and they are incomplete without our voices. So I think real collaboration is a way to capture all those real voices in a way, as you said, that leads to real progress, real real effort rowing in the same direction to get to a result that we just can't get to without each of our individual voices together.
Yeah, and Kurt, I'm going to ask you about your coaching practice in just a second, but I also wanted to ask you about rethinking the recruitment process.
Mm.
So many recruiting managers and hiring managers are focused on resumes today and not looking beyond the resume. So I'm curious, how do you think leaders today can go beyond the resume and really diversify their recruiting or hiring or talent management process? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that you know this. I don't know if this was in my bio, but I spent a handful of years doing recruiting for a manufacturing plant for the plant's recruiting. Yeah, I mean, to your point, in 2026, I mean, resumes, they all look the same. I mean, AI is real, right? There's very little that separates any resumes anymore. And I also have this deeply held belief that most hiring managers just hire themselves. I think most recruiting teams will just recruit themselves, not because they're bad, not because they're malicious. I think that's our kind of natural. Like if I'm a recruiter, I tend to think I'm a pretty good employee, and I think more of me would probably be good for a company, and that's just not the case, right? Then we just end up with a bunch of me or a bunch of you, and I think what I would say to that is if a recruiting manager really wants to get honest about who they're recruiting, I think that requires a really clear and concise and actionable statement or process that makes sure that they're looking outside of themselves, that makes sure that they know what a team needs to round it out, to how to make a team that has voices that are heard from all parts of the room, all parts of the spectrum of how we think about things. I think I would always want to tell a recruiting manager to hire a couple people they might resist initially, right? I think recruiting managers resist people who think differently than them, and I think that's often what we need is people that think differently than us.
Yeah, just following up on what you just said. Kurt, as I'm sure you know, doing your research on me, I have cerebral palsy, and I work with leaders to amplify the hiring of people with disabilities. And,
Mhm.
I often tell leaders of organizations that if you hire people with disabilities, you create an instant competitive advantage. And as you know, especially in America now, diversity, equity, and inclusion is sort of going under what I call an extreme home makeover, as
Yeah.
the perception among leaders about the importance of hiring folks with disabilities has somewhat gone by the wayside, which makes my job a little bit easier or harder, rather. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the competitive advantage that people with disabilities can offer to a organization or workplace culture. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, I love it, Kevin, and I think your comments about diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of being blown up. I mean, I think that is a large scale picture of what I said earlier about like we hire ourselves, right? Like the people that are doing away with those sorts of practices really are just then finding more of themselves to do the jobs with them, and we just end up with this echo chamber of people. I I think about your question like this, Kevin. I think as a person who probably thinks more human than process, I probably think more people than I do, mission or vision. I think I've always wondered about the competitive advantage like this. I've always wondered, why do we not apply the same thinking for individuals with different levels of abilities that we would for someone who has an engineering degree and an accounting degree? I don't want to oversimplify it because I know that I don't I want to steer clear of stereotypes, but I think people with differing levels of abilities have just as much individual voice to bring to any workplace as anybody with what we might call a full set of abilities. I don't know how I want to word that, but I think about it the same way. I think organizations need people in the room with varying voices and need to listen to them and varying life experiences, and I don't think we can do that if we're not inviting people with varying ability levels to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Kurt, I see that you have your book in the background there, and you launched your coaching practice and co-authored live fully and lead authentically. And you work with leaders every day because you are passionate about helping people move beyond performance and into wholesomeness, my friend, and wholeness. So tell me about your coaching practice, why you wrote the book, and why you want to help people sort of maximize their performance in all areas of life. Tell me more, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer, the shortest answer to that is, we love the work we get to do with people because the work that we do with people is work that's changed our lives. My coaching partner Chris, he's one of my best friends. He and I have done this work for ourselves for upwards of a decade. We're 11 or 12 years into this work for ourselves, this sort of raising self-awareness so that we can raise our impact in the places we live and lead, and we've seen the transformation in our own lives, and we love getting to work with people to help them see transformation in their own lives. We started this coaching practice after a number of years of what we call coaching separately but together. We got to do some things together where we each had our own careers going. We were close friends, but we had our own careers that didn't mix a whole lot. And we started just finding ways to coach together for a number of years. And then in 2024, some things lined up for me where I could step away from one role, start this full time. And I said, "Hey, Chris, let's give this thing a go full time." He said no. And I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yes, I'm sure. I'm not going to do that." And then he called me a day later and said, "Let's do it." So yeah, we've just loved what we do. We love getting to work with leaders who seek a different way of being. Kevin, there's a million books, there's a million coaches that tell leaders what to do. We we think those are good resources. There's good coaches, good books, good authors doing good work, telling leaders what to do. We think our lane, what we love to do, is help leaders think about how they want to be and how they want to do what they're doing, and that really is the basis of our work. Is addressing not just the what. We really don't get into a lot of what, but we do get into a lot of how and why and who do you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kurt, I'm also curious because I know that you are a big believer in self-awareness and self-reflection, my friend. And what are your thoughts on that, their connection to personal growth and accountability? Because I'll use myself as an example, Kurt. So at the age of 9, I was told by a doctor, Kurt, because of the severity of my disability, that I would never walk for the duration of my life because of the severity of my disability. And I am someone who believes strongly in the power of self-reflection because I believe that if you don't have your own level of sort of self-expectation, it's hard to reach the level of anybody else's. So what are your thoughts on the connection between self-awareness, reflection, and personal accountability and growth? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, great question. This is a really great question, Kevin. I think I would say two things. This is kind of a two-pronged answer. I think first, so many of us as adults are just kind of programmed and wired to look outside of ourselves when we experience difficulties or when we experience challenges. We're naturally wired to say, "Well, this is somebody else's fault, and I need to fix somebody else or something else. I need to address my circumstances outside of myself, and life will just be better." And I think what we would say to that is, especially to leaders, that I can't control anything but myself. Right. I can't control you, Kevin. I can't change what you think. I can't change what you do. I can't change the economy. If I get laid off, I can't change the economy, but I can look inside of myself and examine how I'm showing up in those places. Right. So we think in any given environment, I'm the only part of the environment I can control. So looking at myself and looking at what part of that I control is key to deciding, where do I go? What do I do? How do I address whatever's in front of me? I think the second prong of this is this idea that we believe that most adults, if we can pause, reflect on how we're showing up, how we're leading, how our life is going, how we're reacting and responding to challenges. Most adults, if they can really, truly, honestly do that and see things in front of us, right? If I can see, hey, I lashed out at a person the other day and I don't like that. If I can see it and understand it and like actually allow myself to see it and believe it, now I have a choice. I have a choice to say, do I want to do that same thing next time? Or am I going to choose a different way to be when that same struggle or that same experience comes up again? So I think that's why I say two things. I can only control me. So self-awareness is the beginning of controlling me in a given situation. And I think once I begin to become self-aware and see things about me, now I have agency to do something about them.
And Kurt, I'm curious to get your thoughts on these findings from Deloitte. They say as we enter 2026 that authenticity is increasingly viewed as not just a nice to have or a soft skill, but a critical strategy to increase employee loyalty, with over 70% of employees less likely to leave a company where they feel leadership is genuine in terms of their respect towards their employees and valuing their opinion. This is coming from Deloitte's Human Capital Trends, my friend, and I wonder your thoughts on those findings, my friend.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I would affirm. I mean, I don't have any data, but I would affirm that doesn't surprise me, and I think it's probably true. Here's what I want to say about authenticity that I think that study shows. Kevin, I think there is this myth that authenticity is this level of like, hey, I'm just going to show up and I'm going to be me and you're going to take me or leave me, right? Like if I have a short temper and I lash out at you, Kevin, I think there's a myth that says authenticity is like, well, I'm going to yell at you from time to time, take me or leave me. I don't think that's authenticity at all. I think the shift happening around authenticity is to say that real authenticity is the ability to align our lives with who and how we want to be. And I think that shines through in that study. I think people who are in a workplace being led by a leader, I think people know when they're leading from a place that aligns with who and how they want to be, or they know that leader has no idea how they want to be or who they want to be, that they're simply filling a set of expectations. So I think that study, I love it. I'm glad that that's shifting from that old myth to say like, well, I might bite your head off today, but that's just who I am. I'm glad we're seeing a shift away from that sort of authenticity.
Yeah, and Kurt, can I ask you also about leadership vulnerability? And what I mean by that is, so many leaders hold employees to a certain standard that sometimes they're not willing to hold themselves to. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the importance of leaders being willing to be vulnerable so that they can show that the people that they're in charge of leading, that they're capable of being humanized. My friend, how important do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's so important. I've been around leaders on both ends of the spectrum. Early in my leadership career, I was around a leader who would say, that you can't ever let your people see you bleed, and I remember thinking, boy, that sounds impossible, and I think it is. But to his point, he was saying like, I can't show weakness, or people are going to think I'm weak and they're not going to follow me. I've also seen the other side of the spectrum where a leader is extremely open and vulnerable to say, to say things like, hey, I'm really struggling this season to understand where we're going, but we're going to figure it out together. Um, I, I think I think there's always some wisdom, Kevin, to say be careful how vulnerable you are. That there is some wisdom to say be vulnerable, in a place in a capacity or in a way that's appropriate. I think there are times where being completely vulnerable with no filter is probably inappropriate. But I think if I had to like land on vulnerable or not vulnerable, I think vulnerability always breeds more vulnerability and gives permission for more vulnerability and gives more permission for trust and for relationship building. So I think vulnerability is to your point from the earlier report, not just a soft skill anymore. I think vulnerability is a key critical skill of a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Kurt, our friends over at LinkedIn released a study this year that said that 69% of U.S. employees would consider leaving a job or quitting altogether if they're under bad management or a bad leader. So I'm curious about your thoughts on those findings and how we can make leaders more approachable in today's workplace culture, my friend, so people can stay in their positions. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, Kevin, I love this stat, and I'll be super honest with you. I don't know what to think about it. I think I have conflicting thoughts. I think there's part of me that on the surface I agree that says, like a bad manager, a bad leader can impact our lives in really negative ways, and that I have clients that I've coached before to say maybe it's time to think about a change. But then, Kevin, like there's something in me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. There's something in me that as a coach who works with people on their self awareness, there's a part of me that doesn't want or doesn't think that managers and leaders should have that much power over us. Right? I mean, I think that there is something that I want to challenge in those stats to say, even if I have a bad manager and leader, I still get to show up the way that I want to show up. Maybe the degree, like how bad is the leader? Like, is it unsafe? Is it emotionally unsafe? I mean, I think those are real questions. I think I want to. I want to say yes and to that study and say, yes, I understand there are times where we have to make a shift because of a bad leader. And like I want to make sure that I'm addressing my part in the situation and how I show up too, instead of just walking away. We have a saying in our coaching practice, everywhere I go, there I am. Right. If I'm in a situation where I have a manager that isn't great, again, like let's put unsafety or lack of safety aside. Let's say this is just a bad manager, right? Lack of awareness, right? Let's assume safety is in place, but I think I would say I play a part in how I experience that too. I get to decide how much control that has on my experience of how I work. And if I can't address my own ability to show up in that place, I'm going to take that to the next place I go to and have some of those same things kind of crop up as well for me. So I don't know how to answer that, Kevin. I want to say yes
Yeah.
uh, and I would love to hear what you have to say because I could go either way, I think, on that study.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me help you to try complete that sentence. So I am someone who believes that the more self autonomy that you give leaders, in developing their own way to solve problems, the more productive the entire workforce is. I
Yeah.
will use myself as an example. So I interviewed yesterday for a resource management job for a company that services people with intellectual disabilities, and they asked me my philosophy on resource development, and I told them that I want all of the staff who are engaged and invested in the organization to have a hand in the decision making process, because if they're invested, they feel like they have their own sense of autonomy. And I wonder your thoughts on the importance of leadership autonomy for employees, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, when you say autonomy, I think of the word agency too, and I think we could probably use those words synonymously. Yeah, I think well, what's true for me, and it's probably true for you too, Kevin. Just hearing you talk, anytime I have agency, anytime someone allows me the agency or the autonomy to learn and grow, or even, I mean, let's be honest, to make a mistake, that is number one going to build buy-in on my end. Like I'm going to follow that leader more closely when they give me autonomy and agency and allow me to grow and learn and maybe even fail. That is only going to increase how I think about that person leading me.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carl, just because I'm personally curious, I'm curious if you think there's a linkage between effective psychological safety and personal development or professional development at work, my friend. If we, we have personal or psychological safety at work, do you think people can grow faster professionally? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, Kevin. Yeah, I think psychological safety to me is paramount. I, I also don't know that it's ever possible to be a completely safe place. My partner and I, we always use this phrase like we want to create safe spaces, but as long as there's people in those spaces, there's always a level of risk. And I think that's true, which then requires some courage of me, right? But I do think. Can I give you an example? Can I answer this with an example?
Absolutely, yeah.
I worked on a staff of people in the nonprofit world of about 12 people, and I got to see this. I wasn't the key leader. I wasn't the leader. I was a leader in the system, but not the system leader. And I got to see the leader of the system create a psychological space where people could name what's so for them. They could try and fail. They could name, how they were feeling in appropriate spaces. Obviously, like this wasn't like a, hey, every time we get together, we're just going to like sit and talk about our feelings. There was spaces and places and times built in for that work, And honestly, Kevin, I saw the level of personal growth skyrocket. I saw the culture bloom in really beautiful ways. And I saw the team's effectiveness and even relationships among the team just change in ways I've never seen before. So I think yes. Short answer is yes. Psychological safety, I think, is such a key part of our ability to grow as individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. Kurt, I want to talk to you about trust at work because our friends at Price Waters Coopers, they did a study last year focused on trust at work. And, 86% of leaders or organizational leaders believe that they have a high level of trust amongst their employees, my friend, but only 60% of employees felt trusted by their employer, pointing out, of course, a gap in things like empathetic, accessible, or approachable leadership, my friend. So, why do you think there's a gap between those two numbers, and how can we make sure that employees feel trusted in today's workplace culture by their leaders? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, Kevin, you hit my cynicism bone a little bit here. I can be a natural cynic sometime. I think that gap is really interesting. I'm not surprised that people think they are more trustworthy than their employees believe them to be. That doesn't surprise me. I think that feels pretty human naturey that we think better of ourselves than our employees do. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Kevin. Here's the most honest, like Kurt as a cynic answer here. Um, I I'm not sure that workplace leadership culture today in 2026 actually rewards trust. I think it's shifting. I'm glad it's shifting, but I think there's a really unfortunate strain of leadership that hangs on even today that says, that results are paramount. Results are key, and I think that's like setting aside how important workplace relationships are, how important recruiting is, how important all these other things are for like the sake of the end result of the team. And yeah, I mean, I think that gap just shows me that we still have a long way to go to understand that positive relationships among people actually makes us produce and work better. Because it does, right? A workplace that includes trust and builds trust, a leader who builds trust will get better results over the course of time. Maybe not, in the short term. I think all of this is a long game. But in the short term, I think we're still as a culture focused on, the hustle, the grind, the get stuff done today, get results today at all cost. And I think that gap reflects that.
Yeah, and Kurt, I'm gonna use myself as a personal example when it comes to burnout. So, Kurt, used to serve as the lead job developer at the YMCA here in Windsor, and for better or for worse, my friend, I worked in a very small department, and my boss's desk was directly next to mine, for better or for worse.
Mm.
So, I am someone, so Kurt, I am a recovering email perfectionist, okay? When an email came into my inbox at work, I automatically thought I had to answer it. And I had went home one day and I responded to my boss at like 6 o'clock at night. And she came in the next day and she said, you know you're allowed to have a life, right? And once I close my laptop at 4:30, I disconnect to protect my personal mental health. And she taught me about the importance of disconnecting from work and in order to protect your mental health because everything doesn't have to be done immediately. As my mother tells me all the time, it'll get done when I get to it. So I'm wondering your thoughts on wanting to protect or show your professionalism at work versus also protecting your own mental sort of capability to function. What do you think is the correlation there, my friend?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you use the word burnout, and the stats on how many people feel burnout today in their work is alarming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's only getting worse. I sometimes wonder this. I wonder about burnout like this. I wonder if burnout isn't always as much about how much we do or how much we work, but I wonder if burnout is actually a misalignment of again, who and how we want to be, or a misalignment of boundaries. I think the example you just gave, I would say, is a misalignment of boundaries, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
understanding. And I'm not trying to pick on you, Kevin. Sorry, I just said that because you put it out there.
Yeah.
So I think there's always a question of, like, can we disconnect long enough to assess our alignment again with who and how we want to be? I think the trouble with the leadership culture that we have, I think today, is that it's just hustle, 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 grind, 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 there's never a chance to zoom out. And to your point, check and see, like, do I need to do this today? Like, does this need my attention today, or can it wait till Monday? I think if we're honest with ourselves, Kevin, all of us do. I do exactly what you did, and oftentimes it can wait till Monday. So I think the importance of the disconnect, to answer your question straightforward, the importance of the disconnect is it gives us the ability to get out of the hustle and to be able to ask the questions and to reflect and say, am I aligned with who and how I want to be? And do I have the space and the rhythms that I need to lead a sustainable life and career?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kurt, I'm also curious to get your opinion on the difference between overcompensating to make a positive first impression as a leader versus, authentically fitting in. What do you think is the difference or correlation between the two, my friend?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, boy, it's tempting, isn't it, Kevin, to want to overcompensate and make a good first impression? It's tempting. As a business owner, I feel that all the time. I think the correlation, I'm not sure about. I'd love to hear from you about the correlation between those two things. But when I think about overcompensating, here's what I think about. I think about sustainability. There is a temptation when I feel the temptation to overcompensate. My question I ask myself is, can I keep this up? Like, can I do this same overcompensating the next time and the next time and the next time? Because I'm going to see this person a lot, or I'm going to see this organization a lot. When I think of overcompensating, I think of job interviews right away, Kevin. And
Mm-hmm.
the question is always like, man, if I show up authentically, now I don't have to worry about some kind of magic bar that I've set for myself. Now I just get to be me. I think I always think about sustainability when I think about overcompensating. I don't know. I guess I'd love to hear from you. Like, what do you think about the correlation between those two things?
I always say, if you want to be an effective leader and to show up authentically, I always give myself a question of if I was in this position as a lead or as an employee versus what my leader is asking me to do I think there's an authentic reason for doing it? There's a difference between disagreement and having a common sense. So,
Yeah.
I think we have to close the gap between, a production and, being proactive versus having common sense. And I'm curious to ask you about how you think leaders can close the gap between, their common sense deficit. We all know things have to get done in the workplace, and we all know about deadlines and timelines. But I'm curious about how you think common sense, woven itself into this conversation, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I don't even know what common sense is, Kevin, if I'm honest. Like I think like when I hear you say common sense, I get a little nervous, right? I get a little nervous that maybe I'm gonna have to like make some assumptions that I don't know to be true. I think one of the deeply held values that I hold about leadership is that curiosity is such an important value to hold. I might say, man, I might encourage the leaders I coach to question their common sense, to be curious about it, to confirm, to confirm their biases, confirm their sort of lived experiences, and whether or not that is actually common sense. I mean, I think to your point, I think where you were going with that is like there are times as leaders where we have to make quick decisions. There are times where we have to make decisions where we can't be as curious as we would like, but I think there's lots more times when that pressure isn't real and we can pause and be curious and ask like what is common sense, and am I about to make a decision based on my biases that's common sense to me but might not actually be like best for me or for the organization or for the people that I lead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're someone who believes that leaders have to address their own inner critic and create intentional space for self reflection and to increase their leadership capacity and potential, my friend. So, what goes into effectively addressing your inner critic to be an effective leader? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, that's a good question. The inner critic is mean, mostly. We all have an inner critic, and there are parts of our inner critic that help us, right? There are times where I feel my inner critic that actually there is something that I need to learn, and there is something I need to get better at. But there are more times where the inner critic is tearing me down and keeping me stuck. One of the first things that we work with people to do is to be able to name what our inner critic is saying. Whether that's writing it down in a journal, whether that's saying it out loud to a coach or a trusted friend, being able to name that out loud just does something. There's some sort of magic I wish I could take credit for that happens when we write something down or we say something out loud. And I think part of that magic is rooted in this idea that once we see it, once we give name to something, now we have agency and power to do something about it. If my inner critic says over and over, I'm going to screw up this conversation today. If I can find a way to name that that's how I'm feeling now, with the help again of a trusted friend or a good coach, I have the ability to change that story, to change that narrative by asking a simple question over and over: what's true? What's actually true? And I think over time, then we can shift that narrative and move that inner critic from a voice that tears down to a voice that actually, again, helps us grow in places we need to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kurt, I've got two questions left for you. And the first of those two questions is this, my friend. I want your opinion on the difference between brave and authentic spaces in order to grow. Because I know that you believe that whether you're navigating self doubt or hidden pressures of the job or simply the weight of expectations, it's important to have those brave spaces to self-reflect and sort of ruminate on your own decisions as leaders and their impact on it. So I'm curious about your thoughts on brave spaces and reflection as a leader and their correlation, my friend.
I love that question, Kevin. I'm glad you said brave space. This is a phrase that we use all the time. Again, because when people are around, there's only a certain level of safety we can guarantee. So we believe any work that we do on ourselves and any efforts we take to be authentic in spaces that we live and lead requires a level of courage. The idea that that I'm going to grow myself without some level of fear is absurd. Change is hard. Transformation is hard. Showing up in spaces differently is incredibly hard for various reasons that we would need way more time to talk about. But that courage and that bravery to say, I'm going to try to be brave and courageous and try something else on, that really is, I think, the only way to grow. We would say it like this, that growth and transformation doesn't come from information alone. None of us grow by just taking in information. If that was true, we would all be like peak transformation already. We grow and transform and mature by action, by doing, by practicing, by trying things on. And anytime we practice and try things on, it requires courage for a lot of reasons. So I think finding places where we can be brave at the level we can bear, like I'm responsible for deciding how brave I want to be today. We often tell clients, take a half a step outside of your comfort zone, right? There are spaces, Kevin, where it's probably not safe for people to be brave. Either psychologically or emotionally, it might not be safe, and that's okay, right? That's please. We always tell people be safe. And are there some other places where you can take that half step outside of your comfort zone and be brave for the sake of transformation? And again, I think the correlation to authenticity is if we define authenticity as aligning our leadership and our life with who and how we want to be, man, like we're going to have to find a lot of brave spaces to try that on, or else we just stay stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kurt, my final question for you this morning has to do with your own personal and professional legacy, buddy, and how you want that to be defined.
Yeah, I love Kevin. Your questions are so good, and I love this one the most. This one's easy. I think about this one a lot. I have a couple kids, so I think about this a lot. Two things are true. I want my legacy to include some sort of words around that I cared well for people. I just have a deeply held value that I want to love the people around me as well as I can. Not just my family, the people that are in my space. I want to care well for people. The second thing is I want my legacy to include something like Kurt aligned his life and leadership with who and how he wanted to be. Not perfectly, not right away, not like a flip of the light switch, but continually over the course of time, his life and leadership looked more and more like who and how he wanted to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, my friend, tell me if people want to get connected with the great work that you're doing, what's the best and most effective way they can do that, my friend?
Yeah, our website is the easiest way. Our website is brimstonecoachinggroup.com. On our website, you can find anything you want to know about who we are, why we do what we do, how we do it. We also have a podcast called Live Fully, Lead Authentically. You can find that on the website as well. The book, as you said, Over My Shoulder, is on our website as well. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we believe in the work we're doing. We believe that it changes lives and communities and will change the world. And we offer a free inquiry call for anybody that's curious if this work might be good for them. We'd love to have a conversation with people free of charge, no obligation, just to see if this might be a good fit.
Fabulous. Well, Kurt, as someone that values effective leadership development and always expanding our knowledge base. I truly enjoyed this conversation, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this morning and for all the positive work that you're doing to positively move leadership development forward, my friend. I want to thank you for being here this morning. It's most appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.